Hi, welcome to Story Time with Dan Booker. Appreciate you being here and glad you're back to join to join me on another reading. Today we're going to be continuing on with book four of the Sharing a Small Town. And I gotta there we go. Oh, there we go. All right, today's chapter is High Flyers. Morgan, Rocky, Talbot, and Josh were at the diner for lunch. Joe had been invited, but had declined in order to go home to his wife. All around them, the sounds of clattering silverware mingled with the soft-talking customers. Dora, their favorite waitress, filled their coffee and brought their food. They hadn't ordered, there was no need. They always ordered the same thing, so the moment they sat down, their order was placed. In fact, each was so regular that if they didn't show at all during the day, their office or home were called to see if they were all right. While the others talked, Josh was studying the calendar of events for the rest of the year and into the next. He seemed unhappy with what he was seeing. Morgan tapped him on the shoulder. Josh, we're on a break. Put those things away and enjoy some time with our family. Being called family by Morgan was considered by Josh the highest compliment he could ever receive. He dutifully put away the papers, but that didn't put the thoughts out of his mind. As they ate and joked with each other, Josh was continually mentally going over the year's events and considered they were missing something important. Eventually, he couldn't hold it in any longer. Turned to Morgan. Dad, he gulped and apologized. Morgan, I feel we're missing an important group from these events. Morgan sighed. Damn, son. It's all well and good being conscientious on the job, but dang it, you don't need to think about work all the time. Anyways, how can we be missing anyone when all the events are open to everyone in town? Just Josh considered that momentarily, and the answer he sought came to the surface. Sorry. Kids, we need to have at least a couple of big days just for the kids. Rock looked over. That's not a bad idea. Squeal of delight from the other side of the window brought the conversation to an abrupt halt. Jane, Josh's fiancée, had seen them all from the window and excitedly rushed inside. Josh had been so busy that his visits to Jane were rare, and she was taking every opportunity that presented itself to be near him. She looked imploringly at Rocky, who was closest to the window. He nodded that she was welcome. She rushed in, placed an order for the table they were sitting at, and practically leapt into a seat Josh had brought over. Sitting patiently for food, her hand slipped under the table and squeezed Josh's upper thigh, turning him red. So, what's the conversation? She inquired enthusiastically. Oh, Josh was talking about having kids. Morgan was going to add events added to the calendar, but never got the chance. She gasped and squeezed his thigh harder, making him jump. She gasped, Josh, we're not even married yet. You really want to try and have kids already? I mean, we have been, so I guess it's possible, but Josh hurriedly kissed her to stop the flow of chatter to the amusement of the rest of the diner who had heard her. Over lunch, they discussed children's events they could have. Jane was a fountain of ideas, and Josh was hard-pressed to keep up writing with them all down. As they looked over the list Josh presented, they decided on a test event to see how it would be received. I think we could do the kite construction of flying first. Kids can gather sticks, tie newspapers to them, and done some rags. It should be relatively inexpensive and a lot of fun. Rocky suggested that they check with the hardware store and the lumber yard for scrap sticks and doweling. The Sentinel could provide newspapers, and he knew the general store had gotten a double consignment of kite string. Or do you think we ought to do an ice cream social at the end? It's kind of become tradition for anything. Morgan considered it and shrugged. Well, might as well. I hear the ice cream shop has a new soft serve machine. So it's faster and easier to do cones with it than scooping hard ice cream. Tom said at the last event he wants to start handing out nickel cones. Smaller size, but just as much ice cream. Be better for the young'uns. What do you think, Josh? Josh and Jane were still kissing, and when he finally came up for air, his mind was elsewhere. Well, what was that? Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Morgan laughed. Now I'm going to break for a second here. I'm going to move this aside or have a soda because my voice is just totally shot today. I think I smoked or something. I wish I. Now, hopefully that helps a little bit. Morgan laughed. Josh, why don't you take the next couple of days off? I'll handle the logistics and get the ball rolling. You and Jane haven't seen enough of each other lately. Jane looked at Morgan with extreme gratitude. After eating and pleasant conversation, Josh and Jane went to Jane's home. Somehow, she was determined to get Josh to set a wedding date before the sun set. In the office, Morgan was about to set the process for the event in motion. Instead, he called Julia to see if he could have her insights. As a teacher's aide, she was in a position to know more about the question than himself. She arrived in moments, panting at his office door. Seating her, he outlined what had been discussed. You spend a lot of time with the kids in town. What do you think about doing the kites as an experimental event? She looked over the notes. Well, I think you have the right idea. Have them build them from the ground up, but we'll need to have some small ones that are ready to go for the youngsters who aren't old enough who can't build them. She suddenly got excited as new possibilities arose. Honey, why not combine this with a fishing competition at the river, same as we have for the adults? Now, Morgan figured they might as well pack it with activities, and the ones that got the most play would be kept. The others passed. He planned on doing beanbag toss contests as well as a big water balloon battle at the end. The more bows he got, the more excited he was becoming. Doing something that they'd never done before had that effect on him. Called the paper and put in an ad for what was being planned. A few weeks later, Morgan was at the courthouse going over final prep for Fun Day. Talbot was going over previous traffic patterns and blockages and picked the one for the field and type of event. Or since we're doing this for the kids, I want to have parking way off and keep traffic away from the field. That's not too far to walk, and the kids will be safer without cars zooming around. Suddenly, his eyes widened, and he looked as though an actual light bulb had lit up, with blinding brilliance. Morgan, we've got the makings of a block party here. Why not go all out and have one? Morgan's brows puckered. Just what is a block party? Well, basically, it's what we always do. It's just more informal. Let's say Kit Carlson wants to close off the street where she lived and have a party with all her neighbors. Call me to block off the street. Then bring out tables, barbecues, music and stuff for the kids like sprinklers or water balloons, and just let it happen. Not so programming, just folks having a good time. I've been talking about having one around the church with Pastor Martin. Do you mind if I get with him and take the outside part of the fence? Morgan couldn't see any reason to object. He had no idea what would be going on while the kids were having their party, but decided it might be fun to see something spontaneous. I'm going to need another drink. Sorry. Talbot bolted out the door and raced to see Pastor Martin. In his office, Talbot laid out his plans. Pastor Martin was agreeable and would get the word out on Sunday. He'd get a list of names of people that wanted to get it going. The rest would take care of itself. As Talbot was about to leave, the pastor held out his hand. Talbot, let's show this town what a real party is. You've been dying to get this going for a while. Guess next week is a good time to start. I've got the chapel band there loaded with tables and chairs. Rubbed his hands together. It's going to be one heck of a party. Sunday, the announcement for the additional block party went out. The response was unbridled enthusiasm. Saturday of the following week, the street was blocked off to the field. Pastor Martin had opened the van and was handing out folding tables and chairs. Folks Folks were bringing in barbecues and bowls of food. Someone set up a boom box for playing tapes. People who were outside the field were wandering around and greeting each other. Morgan was marveling at how swiftly the second event was coming together. In the field, Rocky and Agnes were wheeling barrels full of apple water balloons for later. These were placed in two kiddie pools on opposite sides of a chalk line. The Sentinel had donated enough back issues to make hundreds of kites. There were plenty of comic pages for added color, too. Off by the lake was set up for a children's fishing tournament. Since the block party was also supplying music, the band decided to work with them to alternate once in a while. Talbot bought his guitar and was joining in the festivities on both sides. Joe was walking around keeping order with Peggy at his side, as usual. Sitting on the grass with Mary and Larry beside them, Michaela and Agnes were teaching kite building, along with many of the older gentlemen scattered around teaching as well. The general store donated cases of string, and there seemed to be enough no matter how many kites were made. Jacob from the garage had torn up rags to use as kite tails, and the lumber yard had contributed plenty of dowels and wood slats. Rocky had run back to his truck and put on the stilts he had created a long time ago for another event. Walking around, he made balloon animals and dropped them down for the children to catch. Julie was sitting on one of the picnic tables and taping kites together as fast as she could. She was surrounded by the children she was a teacher's aide for. Morgan had Rocky toss down a bag of the thin, long balloons for him to blow up. He had never made balloon animals before, but was able to figure out the balloon soared and made a bunch for playing pirates. Peggy took a break and was helping the children by holding the kites aloft until the wind caught. Morgan decided that he'd help her as she was getting winded. At the river, parents were helping their children fish. Others were helping build or fly kites, and some people brought frisbees and children's games. Twister became very popular, and Sam, who marked out the fields before games, chalked out plenty of hopscotch scattered around. Sitting with Julia, watching the day unfold, he realized that what he had planned was changing spontaneously into something else. There was a freedom from structure where children were concerned. People brought things to augment the official games, and the children were scattering all over trying to get to everything. Tucker was in the middle of the frisbee throwers who had discovered he could leap high and catch. He was having the time of his life racing off, catching a high throw to applause and racing back with it to the thrower. Sitting with his arm around Julie, he kissed her head. You know, this isn't much like we planned. Gus was walking around with a photographer from the Sentinel. He had a listing of pictures he wanted of the events they had planned out. What he was seeing was not the event he had planned on. It was a mixture of his vision and then all the other things folks had brought. He found it frustrating. Jane was at the river helping some of the children, then she'd rush and help with the kites, then head over outside the fence and sample some greens or barbecue chicken and Creole. She danced to funk, soul, and blues, and headed over to hear some children's favorites played by the band and march around with the kids. Josh noticed Morgan sitting and watching the controlled chaos happening around him with a grin. Driving slightly out of breath, he waved his hand around. Morgan, what happened? This isn't anything like what we had written up. No timetable being followed. There's no order to anything. He turned his fingers through his hair and looked in astonishment at Morgan, who seemed to be enjoying it. When did we lose control? Julie pulled on his shaking hand and pulled him to sit with them. Morgan put an arm around his shoulder. Josh, look around. Not at what we put together, but at what everyone contributed. The kids, who, if you remember, are the point of this, are having the time of their lives. The block party was a last-minute add-on. It seems to be a hit. It's allowing darn it. It's allowing a group to really come together and show us what they're all about. The food, music, and fellowship is fantastic and different enough to allow folks to see things they don't usually see. Pastor Martin joined them with a plate of ribs, enough for all of them. Morgan, Josh, I want to thank you for letting us set up the block party alongside your event. I'm going to have them more often if they can be arranged. Morgan was emphatic. Pastor, anytime you want to hold them, I'm sure Talbot will accommodate anything you need. Our office can set aside a fund if you need one. Morgan shook his head. Al, won't be necessary. Folks around here just bring what they can to share. It's more about fellowship than anything else. When the block party, Run DMC, was turned up and the dance-off began, kids went to the fence line to watch the dancers, with a few joining from the sidelines. As they moved towards evening, the ice cream parlor brought in the ice cream, including a soft serve for the children's cones. With the day closing, Rocky lifted the tarps off the mountain of water balloons. Mad rush, and the air was full of flying missiles, landing with a splash on everyone. As a teacher's aide for many of the children, Julie was a prime target. Morgan, with true nobility of spirit, took the brunt of the balloons, with Julie receiving a minimal spray. Once they realized she was being protected, it was a bombardment. Morgan was soaked through, and enough of the balloons made it pass that Julie also got wet. Morgan let out a comic roar and chased the screaming and laughing children all over. When he slipped in some mud, he was rushed and was lost under a pile of laughing children who rolled in the mud with him. Well, I think that puts the finishing touches on the party, he said, and everyone started packing up to go home. Surprisingly, it took only an hour for the place to be cleaned up, packed up, and for everyone to depart. Josh sat on a table and ruminated on the odd day. He was going to write out the after-action report, but he was forestalled by Jane, who had him close his eyes and led him to the mud puddle, into which she tripped him and wrestled, after which she led him to her place to clean up and rest. All right, that's it. I do apologize for my voice. The next chapter is How. So that will be doing on, what is it? That will be doing that. We'll be doing that. What is today? I don't even. Today's Friday. We'll be doing that on Tuesday. So I appreciate you being here. I look forward to seeing you again on our next reading. Hopefully my voice will be better by then. I do apologize for it. I don't know what's going on, but take care of yourselves. Be good to yourself, and I will see you on Tuesday. Bye.